Cool. We'll get started now since we have a lot to cover and people can, keep coming on as we go. Um, so I'm excited for this. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so it's cool that it's kind of finally here. And thanks everyone for being on here, and special thanks to our panelists. I know you guys are taking time out of your kind of busy schedules to be here, so it's awesome that we can collaborate tonight on some running topics specific to female runners. So a little bit about me. My name is Hannah DePaul. I'm a sports certified physical therapist. And I work at Adams Sports Medicine and Physical Therapy. We are located in Novi, Michigan, and we have a new location in Royal Oak now too. At Adams, we specialize in treating endurance athletes, including runners like yourselves, triathletes, cyclists, swimmers, and a lot of our staff is involved in endurance sports as well, which makes it a fun atmosphere in the clinic. And I've become really passionate about working with young female runners, which is, one of the reasons why we're doing this today. I actually come from more of a swimming background. I swam growing up and swam at college at University of Michigan. And then got my bachelor's there in movement science. And then I went to Duke to get my doctorate of physical therapy. And that's where I transitioned into more doing triathlons, and I've really done all distances from the sprint distance up to the Ironman. And I've done the Kona Ironman 2 times, and now I'm focused on some running specific goals. So I'm sure some of you guys on here are kind of wondering, why I decided to do this, why, I decided to do this panel discussion. And really it goes back to Katie Noble, my former coworker, and we may have spoken to your team previously about health topics in female runners and injury prevention. And really I wanted to expand on these topics, and what better way to do this than talk about these topics with experts in the running and the nutrition field. And, part of my goal is to help promote a healthy running culture. There are some specific myths, especially in female running culture, that exist that can really create a toxic culture and influence unhealthy behaviors to develop. So I want to talk about these myths and, try to kind of bust some of these myths and prove that you can be healthy and you can run at your optimal level. And, just in general, some specific trends I've seen in the clinic. Like I work with a lot of young female runners, and some things that I've just seen more of include amenorrhea, which we'll dive into some of these topics. But amenorrhea is basically when you've previously had a normal menstrual cycle and then you lose your menstrual cycle for at least 3 months, or if you haven't started your menstrual cycle by the time you're 15. I see pretty commonly bone stress injuries. This ranges from stress reactions all the way up to stress fractures. I see overtraining and under recovery. And then another big one is under fueling. And this combination of overtraining and under fueling can lead to what I call relative energy deficiency in sport. It's kind of a new topic that's being researched a lot more, and I'll dive into this in some of the questions, but it's basically when there's a mismatch between your energy expenditure, the calories you're burning when you're running, just in life to keep you alive, work demand, or for you guys, school demands more so, things like that. When that energy expenditure is a lot higher than what you're consuming through your fueling and your nutrition, you can get into an energy deficient state. So again, we'll talk about, a little bit more about that. And through this panel, I want to create an open space where we can talk about these topics. Some of them can be a little bit difficult to talk about, and that can make a runner feel very alone. But I never want you to feel like you're the only person going through this and you can't get help. And I can pretty much guarantee that if you're struggling through something, or if you have a specific injury, someone on your team could very well be feeling the same thing, as I'm sure we'll find out from our panelists, maybe they've dealt with something similar as well. And so it's really important to call upon your support system and just know that you're not going through this alone. And, I understand being an athlete and wanting to do everything you can to perform and run at your optimal level, but I never want you to feel like you have to compromise your health and your happiness. And I want that to be kind of a key message throughout this. I truly believe that you can be healthy and happy and run at your optimal level. So again, we're going to kind of dive into some of these topics. So I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Erin and Nicole, a little bit more running specific background, and then Maureen, you can introduce yourselves as well.
Sure. My name's Erin. I ran competitively at the University of Michigan for the varsity track and cross country teams, where I had the distinct honor of being we finished second place in the NCAA in 2016 at the cross country championships. And was was able to work with a phenomenal team and was able to have a fairly successful collegiate career at Michigan. And now I just kind of started my first professional deal running for the Hansons Brooks team based out of Rochester. And I'm also a second-year medical student.
My name's Nicole Sifuentes. I also ran at the University of Michigan. Track and cross country from 2004 to 2009. After I graduated, I competed professionally for about 10 years, and I made it to 2 Olympic teams. And I then retired at the end of 2018, and now I coach full-time with my own business, recreational runners primarily. So I work primarily with adults. But I did also have a nice stint of volunteering at the University of Michigan as a volunteer assistant coach. So I had a lot of opportunity to work with some awesome college athletes. Erin was one of them. So that's kind of a little bit of my running background. I'm still a runner now, but I run a lot less now than I ever have in my life.
All right, my name is Maureen Stoecklein. Dietitian for about 25 years. I'm also a full-time firefighter, so I have a dual career kind of going right now. And I too, much like the other 3 on this panel, am passionate about helping especially female athletes because I did not run in college, nor did I go to the University of Michigan. I went to Madonna University, which is in Livonia, and I played volleyball. But when I was done playing volleyball in college, I too picked up running and started to run quite a bit. And I can share a little bit later on about some of my underfueling stories that really got me in some trouble. And I've learned a lot from that. And I think that it's been a tool that I've used for helping educate other athletes too. But I also have run marathons. I've done all distances of triathlons as well, including one Ironman, just one. But right now I'm just kind of, training for life. I try and stay in pretty good shape as far as my endurance goes, just because of my job primarily. And then I also do a lot of strength training. But I'm just looking forward to sharing any information that I think can help. The other thing that I do currently is I'm the dietitian for the New York Mets. So on my days off from the fire station, I travel back and forth between here and New York. But this season we've had a little bit different setup, so I've been able to work remotely, which has been nice because it's enabled me to do some things back home too. So,
and I would like to just read off a little bit because Erin and Nicole did not go into details of how awesome of runners they are. But Erin is a nine-time NCAA Division I All-American and 10-time Big Ten champion and a 4-time NCAA runner-up. And you also have an awesome blog, which I'll probably have you share kind of more at the end, that I think gives a lot of good information. And then Nicole, your Olympic Games semifinalist in London and Rio, which I know you mentioned going to the Olympics, but that's super, super stellar. And you were a 12-time NCAA All-American. And I think your coaching background will be really cool because, you'll have some different input, and Erin also having a med school background now, you have definitely a different viewpoint and, kind of know the science behind some things as well. So how I want to do this, we'll get into the kind of meat and potatoes section and start with some of the questions. So I'm going to start with Erin and Nicole, kind of more running specific questions, but Maureen, definitely chime in too, and then we'll dive into more of the nutrition specific questions. So we're going to start, kind of keep it kind of light here. So I'm curious for Erin and Nicole, when did you start running? And especially for all the high school cross country runners on here, when did you know you wanted to run in college, and kind of how did you know you wanted to run in college? Either one of you can go first.
Okay, I'll go, and then Erin, you can go right after. I started running about I joined a track club in grade 7. I grew up in Canada, and high school track programs aren't as set up quite the same way they are in the US. So I joined a club in grade 7, and mainly that was because I realized through trial and error that I was terrible at all other sports and had no coordination. Hand-eye coordination was non-existent. And then running, it was the one thing I could actually kind of literally keep up with my peers at. So I wanted to, my parents signed me up for a track club, and I was with the same after school track club all grade 7 through grade 12. I can't say exactly when I knew I wanted to run in college, but I did realize over the course of time, with the success I was having, I traveled out of my province and actually out of Canada to the US for some high school meets, and I realized that I had what it would take to maybe nab a scholarship here in the US in Division 1, where the competition level in university here in the US at D1 is deeper and tougher than in Canada. So I was interested in that challenge. And that happened, I think, maybe somewhere in grade 11 or 10, when I realized this would be a possibility for me.
So for me, I kind of just have always run. I think there was a race up north that my family would always do on the 4th of July. And when I was around 5 years old and started being my mom, who's no slouch herself, we were like, maybe this girl should go out for cross country someday. And so that was kind of, I wasn't really good at any other sports. The only reason I was okay at soccer is because I'd kick the ball down the field and be the only one who wasn't tired enough, or who was, still had enough energy to go and get it. And so in 7th grade, I started running cross country, and, grew up a big Michigan fan. And so to be able to, follow kind of in the footsteps of some local running giants like Shannon Osika and Brooke Handler, it was just a really big dream come true to be able to run at Michigan.
Awesome. And now to kind of dive into some of the kind of more important topics, Erin and Nicole, what were some of the mental and the physical struggles that you encountered during high school, and then also during college? And then, what were your big things you did to address these struggles?
Yeah, I can take this one first. So my problem has always been, and probably will always be, making sure I'm eating enough. It's something that, especially in high school, I didn't really realize was going on, but I definitely was not fueling properly, and it showed up in a variety of ways. Especially my freshman year, I had a couple stress fractures, and I realized I needed to kind of that made me realize I needed to train a little less. And I don't actually think I needed to train less. What I needed to do was eat more. But the balance of less training kind of helped make sure my fueling needs were met. But towards the end of high school, I started to develop an iron deficiency, and I just couldn't correct it. Kind of realizing now, looking back, that was likely because I wasn't fueling well enough. When you're not feeling well enough, you have trouble getting in essential nutrients such as iron. And I'm sure, as a lot of you guys know, low iron is it's the harbinger of a bad season. You don't have enough energy, and you just can't run well. So I know if I had been eating better in high school, then I would have been able to run better. And then I guess that kind of transitioned into college too, where I had a really successful first couple of years as a Michigan runner because I kind of was just I was honestly just getting lucky. I didn't realize that I still wasn't feeling right, and the problem hadn't really totally caught up to me yet. But by my junior year, sophomore junior year, I started to get stress fractures again, and it was finally then that I realized, wow, like this is my own doing. You know, I'm not eating enough, and so my body isn't reaping the benefits of training. And so yeah, so that is I kind of learned through my own trial and error that I wasn't treating my body right, and that I'd be a much better runner if I could figure out how to get this fueling thing down.
Okay, so I'm going to key off Erin a little bit because my story, I guess, is like a different, the opposite perspective, or a contrast, because in high school, I would say that I was relatively, you know, I don't remember a ton of struggles other than just learning that I needed to stop complaining and work hard. I wanted to run fast, but I'd complain about workouts. So that was something that I learned. That was a challenge and it was humbling, but luckily I learned it early. In terms of eating and fueling in high school, I remember I just was allowed to have ice cream every single night after dinner. My parents were like, "You're running hard, you need to eat." "Yes, go ahead." And I was like, "I will, thank you." So I was definitely a little on the opposite spectrum of Erin, but in college, I definitely had a little bit. I would say that even though I'd never struggled with under eating or under fueling, being on a team, you see a lot of different people struggling with different things. And so I did have teammates who struggled in that way, and it caused me to question a lot of what I did. So even though I, never prevented myself from eating cookies or dessert, I probably over extended to the other way just to kind of counteract the confusion in my mind. So I would say probably in college, looking back, based on how my body changed as I continued running even after college, I probably carried a little bit of extra weight. But in hindsight, I actually achieved a lot. Even in that body, I had a great college career, and I also never got injured. So part of that was absolutely genetic blessings. Okay, certain people can do everything right and they will still get injured. So I definitely do not take credit for all of that, and don't beat yourself up over injuries. But I do think that part of the reason was that I always ate enough food, more than enough. And I was very, very strict with sleeping because I was a tired girl, and I just highly prioritized sleep. No one told me to. I just always went to bed early. I napped every weekend. I was a very atypical college student that way, but I really believe in hindsight that was one of the things that protected me from injury. I would say that I did still burn out in college, especially my freshman year with cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. By the end of the year, I had nothing left to give. I was very tired. It was a big change. I didn't run a lot of miles in high school. I ran a lot more in college. Even though I didn't get injured, I did burn out. I did run out of energy, long seasons, and I think no, even if you give your body, a ton of rest and give it everything it needs, there is still a limit. And I found that the hard way at the end of a couple seasons. So that was one of my challenges.
Erin, I'm glad you brought up the, the not eating enough, and then leading into the iron deficiency, because I see that really pretty commonly in some of the athletes that I work with. They get their iron levels checked and they find that they're very low, and then, they get put on a supplement or something like that. Did you have to take anything for your iron? I guess one of my kind of pet peeves is that, if an iron supplement is great, but it's not actually fixing, for you, it wasn't actually fixing like the root of the problem being the nutrition aspect. And also, you know, commonly that I see the overtraining aspect. So I guess any input on that?
Certainly, yeah. So it's actually funny. I know this is obviously very anecdotal, but for me and for some of my friends, when we were under fueling, we would, you know, have low iron, and we would take an iron supplement, and 8 weeks later we'd still have low iron. The supplement didn't really help. It wasn't until, you know, a couple years later when I finally figured out how to feel better that I was no longer taking iron, but I had iron. My ferritin levels were normal. And so your body, when you're fueling it right, it knows how to keep the levels of micronutrients in the correct amounts. So
Yeah, for sure. Maureen, do you have any input on the iron?
No, I agree with precisely what Erin said. I think when you're eating, you know, a wide range of food, including a lot of variety, your body knows how to assimilate those nutrients and get them where they need to go. I just think that, and also the other problem that you know, a lot of people have with taking iron is it can be very constipating, and so they're turned off immediately from taking it just because of that issue. So when I work with athletes, I really just try and get a good variety and not have just specific foods that they'll only include, you know, just hoping that they'll get all of the micronutrients and the antioxidants that they need to keep their immune system up and to keep them healthy.
And Nicole, I think it's, oh, sorry, did you want to say something, Nicole?
Yeah, I had a question for Maureen about, you know, eating a variety of foods and like the diet, like having a diet that's like a good range of things and your body knows how to work with it. But something that's becoming more and more common in college teams, or at least based on my experience as a coach at Michigan, is veganism and vegetarianism. And so, which I think that definitely makes it more challenging for runners. And can you just offer maybe some tips for women who have those diets?
Absolutely. And I think one of the best things that you can do, so making the decision to become plant-based or vegan or vegetarian, because there's all levels of that, needs to be a responsible decision. So when someone decides that they want to do it for whatever reason, I think as an athlete especially, you have to be responsible and find help. So don't try and take that on by yourself, because you can really miss out on important nutrients when you try and do that. So one of the big challenges for anyone who tries to become vegan or vegetarian is making sure they get enough protein. So in order to do that, I feel like you need some help on some vegetarian sources of protein, or just to clear up the confusion. And then also just making sure that you're not just living off of carbohydrates, because I think that's ultimately what happens when folks don't have the educational background to really make sure they're getting everything that they need, B vitamins, iron, all of those different nutrients. It's certainly very doable. And I myself am plant-based plus eggs. I do include eggs. But so I really try and just make sure that all of those macronutrients and micronutrients are covered with them. And so that does include, to get back to your question, Nicole, including a wide variety of foods and a wide variety of plant-based proteins, especially.
And Nicole, I think it's pretty amazing that you were never injured. Like, that's just awesome, and pretty rare, you know, especially, you know, seeing and working with a lot of runners. Curious, when you talk about the importance of sleep, I, you know, can't say enough importance about sleep, because you know, it's really when your body's gonna recover. How much sleep would you prioritize? You know, I guess when you were running collegiately, for Erin and Nicole, how much sleep would you guys shoot for? Because usually, like with endurance athletes, I say like 7 to 9 is awesome. But it's crazy, like the high school runners that I work with, you know, I'll ask this question and, you know, they'll be like 5, 6 hours. They're staying up super late studying, or maybe on social media or something like that. So just any info on that?
Yeah, so I can't say I necessarily would shoot for a specific number of hours, but I do remember like just very clearly that I cared more about getting to bed by 10 p.m. than I did about like getting an A. Like if it was B, it was B, like that was good and like good enough. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. As a freshman, I went to bed at 10. I was tired and I loved sleeping. And as a freshman, I didn't have to get up too early, so probably 10 to about 7. So I guess it's about 9 hours of sleep. And every single weekend without fail, I would nap for hours on Saturday and Sunday. When many of my classmates or my teammates were studying, doing homework, I actually slept. Like if we went on team trips, I would nap for 3 hours, 2 days in a row on the weekend. And also part of the reason I was able to do that is I took the lowest amount of credits to be academically eligible, which was 12, sometimes 13, based on how the numbers went. So I gave myself that opportunity. I was never overworked from classes. And that's a luxury that many people don't have. I took 5 years to graduate. I also had a scholarship. Like college costs money. So I understand that that's not something that everyone has the opportunity to do, but also sometimes we come in with some credits. I think it's just a matter of, it is priorities. I'm not saying it's because I was super responsible. I'm just saying that was my personality. I liked being rested. I liked going to sleep. I think it's something that is a huge, huge gap in college athletics. As a coach, I just find it sad how little sleep students get, because I actually think it was probably the number one thing that helped me to stay injury free. I know that's rare, but like what I'm saying about the way that I behaved and lived in college is also extremely rare. Like I don't know anyone else who lived like I did in college. I also know very few other people who were not injured in college. Now I'm not saying I take credit for all of it, but I do think there is a correlation, and sleep is like, what's more important, sleeping right or eating right? I can't say, but like both insanely important.
Add in, I completely agree with you, Nicole, and I know that even with the Mets, like there's a lot of money that is now being invested in teaching professional ball players how to sleep. And it's also, I'm with you. I feel like you can be doing everything right. You can be eating right. You can be training right. If you're not sleeping right, you're just headed for trouble. And I think there's more and more research that is going to prove that it's probably the most important thing. So whenever I work with athletes, it's part of your performance plan, I call it. Scheduling your sleep has got to be part of it if you want to be able to recover, and to, like every athlete does, you're like waking up doing the exact same thing the next day. In order for your body to continue with that daily grind, it's got to be rested, and I think sleep is where it's at.
Awesome, for sure. So wanted to move into talking about more of the importance of a normal menstrual cycle. And I think more and more research and knowledge is emerging on the importance of the female maintaining a normal menstrual cycle through their running, well, really through any sport in general, but specifically running today. And, this is a really important indicator that you have adequate energy availability. Back to that relative energy deficiency in sport, you want to make sure that your energy expenditure isn't higher than your energy intake. If it is kind of chronically, you're more likely to lose that menstrual cycle. So again, that menstrual cycle can almost be like a vital sign. Like every month, it's like a monthly check-in that my energy levels are normal. I'm curious, Erin and Nicole and Maureen, you can chime in. What has been your experience with running and your menstrual cycle?
Okay, I'm so excited to talk about this because I'm really passionate about like the female athlete triad and research and relative energy deficiency in sport. And this is kind of an area of medicine I'm really interested in as a medical student. It also, though, it comes from my own personal experience in running. And I know that I was under fueling in the first part of my college career because I didn't have a normal menstrual cycle. I had what's known as functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, or essentially your brain isn't sending out enough. It's not sending out enough hormones to have the rest of your to have the rest of your hormonal cycle work correctly. And my brain wasn't sending out signals correctly because it wasn't getting fuel. It knew that my body was in a state of low energy, and that it didn't have energy to waste on, my on kind of running my monthly hormonal cycle. And that was really tragic looking back, because we're finding so many things out about what adequate energy states can do. Adequate energy states, they keep you healthy. They make you respond to training way better. They prevent you from getting sick. They make sure you're not chronically cold. So, on those fall days when everyone else is out in a shirt and you're feeling really cold, they prevent that. And then we are so lucky as women that every single month we get a check-in to know, hey, am I doing this right? Am I feeling right? And so I'm so thankful that as a woman, I have a monthly menstrual cycle, and that it tells me if I'm falling behind in my fueling, because that's always going to be something that, I struggle with. And so, I guess my hope is that women runners and women endurance athletes really recognize how special, it is to get your menstrual cycle monthly, and that we don't talk about it enough, and we should. And amenorrhea, it might be common, but it's not normal, and it's not okay. And you will be a better runner with your menstrual cycle. Yes, you might have a couple days where you feel a little bloated, a little crappy, but you know what? You'll be training more, you'll be responding to training more, and you'll be a better runner with your menstrual cycle.
Preach, Erin, preach. That was great. All right, Nicole.
So I was, I would say I was a bit of a late bloomer. I guess I had that red flag because I got my first period when I was 16 years old. But I guess I was never concerned about it. I felt that, I guess, like I said, I had a huge bowl of ice cream every night after dinner. Like, I was a healthy eater. I was just naturally kind of like a gangly late bloomer. Through college, I don't remember anything special. I think I was I don't really have any strong memories. I had a relatively regular menstrual cycle. I think at first it was not super regular, but eventually in like the first year or so, then it became so. I remember one thing I do remember, and I'd be interested to hear from any of you, because you probably all know more about this than I do, but something that I always thought was a bit of an issue is a lot of young women being prescribed birth control to bring the menstrual cycle back. But unfortunately, that doesn't help you use that as an indicator of whether you are healthier or not in the way that you guys have just mentioned. And so that's something that obviously there's a purpose for birth control. I know why a lot of college women, they are using it for a reason, right? And their reason is not necessarily to bring their menstrual cycle back, right? So some people need that for protection, but, is it the best is it the best choice for a runner? And I think you have to maybe be extra careful if you are on it to know, because you don't have that check-in that's true, which is getting your cycle.
Yeah, and my thoughts on that, I'm glad you brought that up, Nicole. So, and you can't say, so like if you go on a birth control pill and you're put on it to like regulate your cycles, it's not even regulating your menstrual cycle, because the bleed you get on the birth control pill, it isn't a true period. It's called like a withdrawal bleed. So you can't think of it as like a true menstrual cycle. And in my opinion, and I'd be curious if Erin feels the same way, it's just masking the issue. Like, you know, if you went off the pill and you didn't change anything in terms of training or fueling or anything, it's not like you would automatically just have a normal menstrual cycle. You would still not have that menstrual cycle, and it's just masking and making you think that you have a normal menstrual cycle when it truly isn't a normal period, if that makes sense.
100%. So I think a very key part of your menstrual cycle that people don't always realize is that it starts in your brain. And your brain is this big sensor for how your body is doing overall. And it senses, you know, your energy levels, how tired you are, if you've gotten enough sleep. And there's so many things that go into your brain sending out the hormones that stimulate your ovaries to make estrogen and progesterone, which are the key players in your menstrual cycle. And so and so birth control pills are only estrogen and progesterone. They don't affect, you know, your brain up here. And in fact, if anything, they actually shut down. There's this thing called feedback inhibition, and those hormones that you're taking in your birth control pills, they actually shut down temporarily, albeit, the hormones from your brain. And so it is just completely masking what your brain is supposed to do. It's masking the power of your brain to monitor your energy levels without giving any of the effective effects of, you know, bone health or training adaptation or any of the good things that come with your menstrual cycle.
For sure.
I think too, Erin, if you could just maybe speak just real quickly to the long-term effects of not having a menstrual cycle. I think sometimes young athletes think in the short term and they don't fully realize in the long term what kind of effects that can have on their health too.
Yeah, definitely. So estrogen plays a really important role in long-term bone health. You know, through your mid-20s, you are still building bone, which sounds kind of crazy, right? You think you're done growing but no, through your mid-20s, you're still building bone. And the estrogen from your menstrual cycle is really important to that. And so if you're not getting that estrogen, then your peak bone mass is going to be limited, and that could honestly affect your ability to run for your entire life if you don't get enough bone mass. And so it's really important to take advantage of this time when you're young to build that bone mass. Now, I don't want to scare anyone thinking that if you're not having your period right now regularly, that you're doomed, because you're not. Fortunately, you're still young and there's a ton of time. I actually increased my bone density by like a couple of standard deviations when I realized I wasn't doing things right. So there's time to fix it, but you just actually have to act and let your body do the amazing things it can do by fueling well.
So my advice to the young female runner, and again, you guys can chime in if you have any input, would be, you know, if a young female runner or I guess any age, but if you lose your menstrual cycle, I would suggest you definitely need to talk about it. You know, this is just normal physiology. So it shouldn't be something that you can't talk about with, you know, your teammates, with your coach, especially your parents. And then talk to your healthcare provider, you know, whether that be your pediatrician or your primary care provider. And the thing with that, if they tell you, oh, it's okay, you're training hard. I've heard that pretty commonly with some of the athletes. That is not okay. And you can correct that physician, or you possibly might need to go see someone else, possibly someone that's specialized in treating female athletes, and especially endurance athletes, I think is important as well, because it's not normal. Like Erin said, it's common, but it's not normal. And knowing that going in, I think is really important. Okay, so let's move on. So I don't know, Erin and Nicole, if you have read Lauren Fleshman's letter to her younger self, but she wrote this article, and I can send it out through email if any of the coaches are interested in reading it. But she's a former professional, and she wrote a letter to her high school self. And one thing she said that really stuck with me regarding going through puberty, and she said, "You'll see girls react to a changing body in 3 ways: give up, ride it out, or fight against it. With 100% confidence, I can tell you the best choice is to ride it out. The best is yet to come." And I think, that's just a really important topic in general, not fighting puberty. And I think part of what we're talking about with the amenorrhea and addressing it kind of goes into that. But Nicole and Erin, what do you wish you would have known or done differently in high school, looking back?
On this issue, for me personally, I definitely did ride it out. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I was late bloomer, whatever that means, but I got my period for the first time when I was 16 years old, but prior to that I wasn't worried. When I got it, I was happy. I was like, okay, well, this is good. This is normal. Here we are. Um, and I definitely, I didn't, I think something that, and this could honestly be different generationally. Like I'm quite a bit old, I'm 34 to give everyone kind of the sense. So even back, like even when I was in high school, running how high schoolers trained was different, and it wasn't as hard, and I didn't run as much. And so I really think that it can be harder to navigate that change when you're already training at a very high level, which a lot of high schoolers do, because you're going to be more prone to notice, um, perhaps a lull in your training or a lull in your progress, for example. And I think that's what Lauren Fleshman may have been alluding to, where she says the best thing to do is ride it out because you'll come out stronger. But for me personally, I didn't necessarily struggle with the transition very much because it almost was just tied into going to college as a freshman, like all of a sudden training more. So yes, I was tired from that. And also I just got tired from 3 seasons in a row. There was a lot going on, but also I wasn't training at such a high level and at such a high volume that any one thing really struck me really hard. And so I feel very fortunate. Definitely wasn't planned or through like knowledge or expertise that I didn't struggle in this way. But I think part of the reason is because I was not training incredibly hard. And the way that I was coached in high school was more, a little bit more speed oriented. So I wasn't carrying that mileage. And I didn't have a very hard, I didn't even have a very hard phase to ride out. Like I think a lot of young women do these days.
I guess looking back, the main thing I would have changed would have been, I mean, I feel like it's beating a dead horse a little bit, but I just would have, probably just made sure I had snacks throughout the day more often, would have packed snacks with me, would have been more proactive about a pre and post run snack, would have had a bigger breakfast, would have just been eating more regularly because my issue was that I just wasn't hungry, or I get up, 10 minutes before I had to leave for class, high school and college. And so like, that doesn't leave much time for breakfast. Right. So yeah, if I could go back, I would just like eat more throughout the day, because that would have really solved my issues. I feel like I was always just so busy that I didn't have time to eat. And then that played a role in my underfueling for sure. I was too busy to be hungry. So, and that's not okay.
And when we talk to Maureen, we'll go into some specifics on like nutrition timing, especially that kind of post-workout window that's so important to hit. And then my last question for Erin and Nicole. Erin, you've kind of already talked about how your running career was affected by injuries, and Nicole, you mentioned that you pretty much, through your running career was injury free, but now being a coach, you have different knowledge as well. But what are some of your big tips, kind of go-to tips for injury prevention? And we've talked about importance of like sleep, fueling, any other tips or anything?
You first.
Okay. So yeah, I would say, just to preface this, don't even bother with these other things if you don't get fueling and sleeping first. Those are the foundations. These other tips will not help prevent the injuries if we're not getting enough sleep and we're not eating properly. Okay, they do not work. They're supplemental. But yes, I think one of the things that's very helpful for injury prevention is actually taking care of your own body. So learning what tools you can use for yourself. So I have I probably have 15 gadgets, which I call my bag of tricks: lacrosse ball, multiple foam rollers, multiple rolling sticks, a bunch of different balls of different shapes and sizes, shaking machine, little vibrating ball, mini band, a bunch of things that I could actually give a lot of treatment to myself if I noticed hurts. How I collected those was over many years of listening when I would get treatment from the athletic trainer, get a massage from a massage therapist. I would ask a lot of questions, say, oh, like this hurts, or you're working on this. What can I do at home to help me stay in one piece till I get back to see you next? Which is, I don't know when. But in college, we had a trainer. So it's amazing to have that resource. If something hurt, if I had a little pain, I actually just respected it. So I didn't run through it. Maybe I have a low pain tolerance, but it is not smart to try to run through it. If something's not right, like, part of becoming a runner is trial and error. Yes, we're going to realize sometimes, like, oh, it was nothing, I probably didn't need to stop my run. And other times, oh, it was something, I should have stopped my run. But in general, I think it's important, just for injury prevention, to understand that running is exceptionally hard on the body. High impact, okay? People, it's probably not your form, it's probably not your shoes that are wrong. Like, running is just hard on the body. And once you realize that and respect it, then all of a sudden, when you have a little pain pop up, you just, give it attention. That may be an extra stretch out, that may be seeing your athletic therapist, getting a massage, doing some rolling on yourself, but taking care of your body as if it's a machine that needs maintenance, and preventative maintenance as well. So not just when something hurts, but like, take care of it.
I can attest to all of Nicole's bag of tricks. She has quite the array of little gadgets, and it's amazing watching her do magic with them. So I'd say my biggest tip that's helped me the most, like, I haven't had a serious injury in a couple of years, quite a few years now, and that's super cool for me because I was at one point getting injured pretty much, I feel like, every couple months of training. And so my biggest trick is obviously, one, fueling right. But two is, if I'm limping even a little bit, I don't run. And that has really made a big difference for me. And some days, like, it's like, oh, I tried to run this morning. I couldn't run this morning, but I'm feeling better at 5 o'clock at night, and I'm going to go out and try my run now because I'm not limping. But sometimes it's like, okay, 2 weeks later, but it's not, the 3 month later type thing. And so I guess just like one last thing, it's kind of not exactly related, but I really want to just make sure all y'all know this, that I'm a much better runner than I was before I made these changes to my health. I think I've run 3 or 4 90-mile weeks these last few weeks, and I'm feeling stronger and better than ever. I haven't gotten hurt in years, and I'm on my way to potentially training for the 10K trials, depending on how busy I am with school next summer, and then definitely the 2024 marathon trials. And my career really is just getting started, and that's because I've made healthier choices, not because of the unhealthy choices I made before. So I just 100% want y'all to know that you will be a better runner making healthier choices.
Awesome. And I want to jump to Maureen. I do have some follow-up questions for you guys if we have time later in the question and answer section. So Maureen, kind of diving into more of the nutrition kind of questions that I had. So, you know, like I said, many of the female runners I work with start to develop signs and symptoms of being in that kind of energy deficient state where their energy expenditure is higher than their energy intake they're getting through nutrition. And this, Erin kind of already talked about some of these health and performance consequences that can occur. But one common reason for this is that underfueling. And how do high school female runners know, how do you know that you're fueling appropriately and enough, I guess?
I think the main thing that has to be a gauge is your energy level. I think when you're feeling really fatigued, and you have to check the boxes too. You have to first ask yourself, did I get enough sleep last night? Because energy is related to a few things, sleep being number one. So if you check that box, no, I did not, then that's probably where it's coming from and you need to remedy that. The second thing is your hydration. So sometimes our energy level can be related to, are we hydrated or are we not hydrated? So if you can check the box for that and say, yeah, I've been drinking plenty of water, you know, I guess the rule of thumb is half your body weight in ounces, probably more for that, more for an athlete, also depending on your sweat. And then the third thing that is obviously related to energy is your fueling. So am I eating regularly throughout the day? When you look at your window of opportunity to eat throughout the day, you know, you spend so much time in bed, hopefully you spend so much time maybe online right now with classes. So your eating opportunities get narrowed. So you have to plan ahead for fueling, feedings, I call them. So if you can have 6 small feedings throughout the day, they have to be a priority if that's what you can do. If you can only manage to get 3 feedings in a day, those have to be planned out, just like your sleep needs to be planned out. So I feel like I always try and encourage my athletes, you're a step above maybe some of your friends that don't compete, because these are kind of like your medication. Sleep is your medication, eating is your medication, and then of course hydrating is your medication. So if you really embrace those 3 things and make those your priority because you want to excel, you want to be a great athlete, they're all going to set you up for success. Just listening to Nicole, I think, man, you know, the pressures that you guys have is so much different than the pressures we have. I am 45 years old, so even older, but you know, I never worried about food. I never worried about, you know, I mean, I think I lived off peanut butter and jelly, but I also never got injured either. And I mean, I had a bedtime and things were just different. And I get it. You guys have a lot of pressures, but I really feel like if you can embrace those 3 things as an athlete, you are just setting yourself up for success and making them a priority.
That's huge. That's super important. And, you know, I know there's tons out there in terms of nutrition. And I guess what are some of the common errors that you see, you know, I guess specifically endurance athletes making in terms of nutrition? Because, you know, you see so much on social media and the internet, and, you know, you can't obviously trust everything that you read, but what are some of the errors that you see?
So first of all, let me just start by saying, if you're going to follow anybody in social media for nutrition advice, make sure that they're a registered dietitian. There are so many really great ones out there, especially sports dietitians. I myself follow them to keep current. And one of my favorites is Elite, ELEAT Nutrition. She does these really great posts on food and on, you know, just current sports topics. She's young, she's relatable, she's cute. So I always encourage you to follow her because she just puts out great information regularly. So make sure you're getting your information from a registered dietitian. The other thing is, I just think that we have to embrace, where is our training taking place? So if you're doing double sessions, if you only have 1 session, what time is that taking place? And you want to surround it with food. So as a high school athlete, I understand right now, especially most practices, if they're taking place, are usually around 2:45, 3 o'clock. So that means we have to front load our day, because that part of our day is what our sport is going to draw off of. So if you're skipping breakfast, it's really common, just like Erin mentioned, you get up late, you're rushing, you're frazzled, so you just float right through it. Well, that's one of those eating opportunities that we've missed out on. And it's going to be our breakfast and our lunch and maybe our snack in between that enable us to perform and perform well come 3 o'clock. If you miss out on those eating opportunities and maybe you cram something in real quickly before you go, your performance is going to suffer. And then the other part is now you're kind of stuck end loading your day with food and trying to get all of those things in that you need in a really short amount of time, and your body just can't assimilate it all and utilize it all and recover properly, which I know is another question coming. But I think you just have to plan things out and space them according to your training time. If you're practicing early in the morning, and I'll address this because I think some practices have shifted to, especially with some of the swimmers that I work with, to practicing really early in the morning. I get it. It's hard to get up 3 hours before a 6 a.m. practice and get your macro and micronutrients on board. But at that point, you have to think about the night before. What did I eat the night before that's going to then enable my body to draw off of those nutrients to get me through this 6 a.m. practice? So that if you get up, eat a half a banana, you're good to go. So you have something in your stomach. It's okay because you had a really great dinner the night before, and it's going to help draw off of that. So it takes some planning and some really kind of careful scheduling on your part, but fueling has got to be part of what you schedule through your day and kind of plan ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned, kind of front loading your day, because I think in terms of, talking about that relative energy deficiency, that's one of the reasons why they call it relative, is because like you can't, relatively speaking, like if you eat, if you just like you said, eat everything at dinner time, relatively speaking, you are still in an energy deficit for most of the time you are awake. And you can't perform at an optimal level in that energy deficient state, even if you do tack on the extra calories in the evening.
Correct. So there are people, not athletes, that get away with eating once a day. And it's just not a good strategy when you're looking at how your body is going to perform. And the other thing is you're going to feel hangry is a real thing. Like when you find your mood, oftentimes I have parents call me and say, we got to figure something out. My daughter is always on edge, or she's become very edgy. And a lot of times that's that calorie deficit that we're functioning in. Your brain, the foods you choose fuel your brain. 25% of what we eat goes to our brain. So carbohydrates and protein, they all have a role in making sure that our mind is functioning properly too. So it's really important that we just kind of infuse that food throughout the day. I know something that's trendy right now, and I'm going to just call it out because it was brought to my attention by a few parents, that intermittent fasting is this trend right now with young female athletes. So they're getting up late, sleeping through breakfast, starting this little 8-hour. That is not functional for a high school athlete. We want to be constantly infused with food and with nutrients. It doesn't have to be big meals, because I get it. You don't want to feel heavy before you go run, especially, but it's got to be well planned out, complex carbohydrates, real wholesome, great food. And speaking back to Nicole, I mean, it's great to have that. Ice cream was probably a great recovery tool for you, and having some milk before bed is actually a good protein to have before you go to bed and carry you through the night, because you're going to flip around tomorrow and do the exact same thing.
And Maureen, since we're talking a little bit about timing nutrition, what's your advice for right after a workout? I feel like I get this question a lot when I do like presentations and things, and it's a little bit outside my scope, but what is your advice for immediately after a workout or a meet?
Okay, so there's 4 things we're trying to accomplish with our recovery nutrition. Number 1 is rebuild. So rebuild and repair, and that comes from protein. So we want to have a really great protein source. The next thing is refuel. So refueling comes from carbohydrates. So we want to make sure we're choosing some whole grains. Maybe it's beans or rice or pasta or sweet potatoes, quinoa, some really great complex carbohydrates. So that's going to help us refuel. The third thing is we want to rehydrate. So that comes from just straight up water. Also, another great rehydrator is milk. So having some milk afterwards, because milk is high in protein. It also has some electrolytes in it. It's actually one of the best sources of electrolytes. So resupply those electrolytes that we lost through our training. And the fourth thing is revitalize. So revitalizing comes from those micronutrients and those antioxidants and those phytonutrients that we talked about, which we get from fruits and vegetables. So our micronutrients come in through that revitalizing, and that helps keep our immune system sufficient, because we're constantly breaking it down when we train. We're around people that maybe aren't as healthy as we are, so we're exposed to different things. This all helps keep our immune system up real high. So that recovery doesn't need to be immediately after. No, not unless you're going to flip around and do another practice maybe a couple hours later. Sometimes you might have a double session. In that case, yes, we need to have something right away so that we can continue with our next practice or event. So that's where something like maybe some toast with peanut butter, banana with peanut butter, even just some fruit would fit in there if we're going to turn around and do something right away. If we're not, then we have a little bit more room to give. So that could give us some time to get home, take a shower, and sit down and have a nice meal. So something within that 1 to 2 hour window is where we're looking to get those nutrients on board. The one thing I will say that I think is fairly common is sometimes if we're practicing late at night, so let's say we don't get home from practice till 7 or 8 o'clock. We think, it's too late. I'm not going to eat anything because I'm going to go to bed. That's a really bad idea. Regardless of what time your training is done, we need to have recovery. Like I said, you only have so much time in this like opportunities to eat. And I think swimmers, Hannah, you can probably relate. Your window is really small because you spend so much time in the pool. But I think runners are the same way, especially when you look at endurance athletes. That's another eating opportunity that you're missing out on. There's not a magic cutoff time for food. Some people think, well, I don't eat after 7 o'clock because at 7:01, I don't know, strangely, something's going to happen to the food that we eat. That's completely wrong. When you are an athlete, you need to refuel. I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night. With baseball, the guys get done playing at 11 o'clock at night. We feed them like a grand buffet of food because they have to be able to come back tomorrow at 1 o'clock and do the same thing all over again. So that recovery is so, so important. So those 4 things: rebuild, refuel, rehydrate, and revitalize. Those are the components that we're looking for that after training kind of food.
Yeah, at U of M, when I swam right after practice, we would have, I can't remember the name of it, but some shake that had protein and carbs. And then we would go to our dry land session, the strength training session, which would last like an hour. And then after that, it was like getting right to the dorms or getting right home to have like a massive dinner.
Yes. You're young. This is the time to embrace that really efficient metabolism that you have, first of all, but also, like Erin mentioned, you're building during this time. So it's so important that we make sure we don't, omit food groups or omit nutrients of some sort. The other thing I just want to speak on real quickly, Hannah, because I know we're short on time here, is some of these stomach disorders that I'm seeing with some of my clients right now are 100% anxiety related. So if you think you have a stomach issue, yes, you need to address it and get some help from your healthcare provider and make sure you can rule out any kind of stomach issue. But beyond that, I want you to take a look at how you're running. Are you running at a high level of anxiety? Or, like Erin has spoke about, are you not fueling enough? Because when you're not giving your body nutrients, when you do give it nutrients, your body's like, what's going on here? So sometimes you can get these really weird stomach issues that happen. So I just want you to be aware of that and just know that when we are on a really great kind of our bodies love regularity with our menstrual cycles, with our sleep, with our food. And when we're doing that properly and we're doing it efficiently and we're doing it regularly, our stomach and everything kind of adapts to it. So just be aware of some of those stomach issues you might be having can be related to stress and to anxiety, which right now is running high with just about everybody.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I do see that a lot as well, and again, kind of outside of my scope for sure. And then is there any specific nutrition advice, like specifically for female endurance athletes that you would say is different from male endurance athletes, or specific nutrition based on where you're at in the menstrual cycle? Anything in regards to that?
I think one of the biggest or most common things that I see with, not that it's different for men and for women, but for athletes, female athletes, is that we tend to be more carb heavy and maybe a little bit more negligent on our protein needs. For an athlete, we're looking at just about 1 gram per pound of body weight. in your protein. So if you take that and math it out, you think, man, I don't know if I'm getting that or not. So what I always encourage is every time you eat, make sure you're including a protein source. We know protein comes from dairy, it comes from meat. Eggs are a really great source of protein. They're also high in those really good fats for our brain. So they're like brain fuel. Beans can be a source of protein. Seeds and nuts are another okay source of protein. So I just encourage athletes, female athletes especially, to really be mindful of their protein and making sure that we're getting that. And protein makes you feel full too. It keeps our blood sugar steady. And then the other thing is during the menstrual cycle is really kind of making sure that you're hydrating, because the other thing, your body, Erin could probably speak to this, but your body temperature kind of goes up during that time too. So in order to really kind of help with that, I think hydrating is really important, especially during that time. And then, just I'm always trying to push more fruits and vegetables, because that's going to cover all your bases with the micronutrients. And that's going to give you, if you have variety, like some people who food prep might eat broccoli every single day, and that's wonderful, but we're missing out on what maybe red peppers have to offer. So trying to get a good variety, 8 to 10 different fruits and vegetables a day. If you try and think about how you ate today, did you get that variety? That doesn't mean you have to have that many servings. It just means that variety. Have a salad and put lots of different stuff on there. Have an omelet and chop different vegetables up inside it. Have a smoothie and throw spinach in there and throw some triple berry mix in there. Now you've got 4 just right in that one little smoothie. So just really kind of focusing on getting some variety in your diet is really important too. It's good for your gut health. Our gut helps our mood, and it's also important for our immune system.
Awesome. Thank you. Nicole or Erin, any input on any of the nutrition side of things?
I guess my best tip real quick is something I just figured out, because I'm going to have to start running super early in the morning or super late at night, is to run early in the morning. I would used to have like really bad stomach problems. And so to get rid of those stomach problems, I found out that actually eating literally right before I go out the door is better than eating nothing, which sounds weird, right? But if I have something in my stomach, it makes blood rush to my stomach rather than kind of stay away from my stomach. And the blood coming to my stomach prevents the uncomfortable stomach issues later on. So my best tip is to, if you're going to run, first thing in the morning, wake up, eat something, and then 10 steps later, head out the door. But make sure you have, a couple bites of something, because that'll keep your stomach from hurting.
In swimming, we did doubles most every day. So starting at 6 a.m., I had the brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts like every single day before morning workout. And that was my go-to. Probably maybe not the healthiest option, but hey, it worked and I digested it well and, all that, which is important.
Yeah,
I think that's another really important thing as a run. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, it's important to practice with your food. So know things that work for you, just like Erin was speaking to. You got to have, even you, Hannah, with the Pop-Tart. Whatever your go-to is, practice with it. So come game day or come competition day, it can be your same go-to, and you're not playing around with a new food, because that can have some really detrimental effects. So practice with your food too.
I would kind of echo what Maureen was saying about variety. I think that's something that even now I think about a lot, is not trying to really restrict certain things in my diet at all, but focusing more on including things. So I can let myself eat anything. There's no bad foods, but I also need to prioritize and intentionally think about fruits and vegetables for sure, because I don't naturally love them. I don't dislike them, but I don't love them. And if I didn't make the intentional decision to think how much fruits and vegetables do you eat today, and I could have a bowl of cereal for breakfast and then a sandwich for lunch, and maybe on that sandwich there's one piece of lettuce, but then where are you at dinner? I have my whole day has I have a lot of making up to do at dinner, because I have a lot of things I haven't eaten yet. So I think that's something that I continually challenge myself with, and I wasn't great at in high school, is including that variety and getting the fruits and vegetables. I would say from personal experience, don't have a ton of raw carrots right before your run. There are certain things that are harder on the stomach, and Hannah said like the brown sugar Pop-Tart, like, I mean, that's heavily processed, but that means your stomach doesn't have to process that for you. The machines did when they made it. And so that will be easier on your stomach pre-workout, but then of course later you got to get those fruits and vegetables in, and so you got to be even more intentional. And just like Maureen has said many times this evening, like, it's intentionality. And if you want to be a good athlete, you have to be intentional about more than just your training. It has to be about eating. When you eat, when are you going to get your food, but also like, what was in that meal? Was there fruits and vegetables, and making sure that they're included? And I think a lot of diets could, you know, be improved just by focusing on what are we including enough water, and are we including enough fruits and vegetables, and then the protein too. And then we don't have to worry about, you know, restricting anything. We just got to make sure that I'm not a dietitian. These are just, you know, life hacks that have worked well for me. And I agree with everything that I've been hearing.
Awesome. Well, I could ask like so many more questions, but we gotta cap it. So I do want to open it up to some questions. We did get one, actually real quick before we go into the questions. I want to make sure, how can people keep track of what you guys are up to, or like either through social media, or do you have any websites or anything like that where people can follow along?
I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I think Facebook is, I've been told it's only for old people, but I am on there. And it's just my name. So it's Maureen Stoecklein, and I try and post things pretty regularly, but that's where you can find me.
Cool.
Okay, so I have a personal Instagram. It's ND Sifuentes. And then I also have a business Instagram, which is Sifuentes Coaching. And on there, I try to put like a bunch of tips about running. I share like, as I am a running coach for my job, but I give as much information, coaching information away as I can possibly for free on my website, through my blog, and on my social media. So sifuentescoaching.com. Sifuentes Coaching is my handle on Instagram. I'm also there on Facebook. Yes, I think Facebook is for older people, but I'm there, so maybe that says I'm also old. So that's where you can get a hold of me. I was on Twitter, ND Sifuentes, but it's hacked. So if you see anything on there questionable, it's not me, okay? I don't have access to the account. So that's where you can get a hold of me. And if you send me a message or tweet, or not tweet, but DM me, I will respond to any questions I can about running. So thanks for the opportunity to be on the panel.
Well, I am not as young as all of you as all of you participants, so I'm not on TikTok, and I refuse to be on TikTok because RIP Vine. But I am on Twitter and Instagram, and I post a lot of silly things on Twitter. So if you don't want that junk, you don't have to follow me there. And then I have a blog. It's erinfinn.wordpress.com. And yeah, so if you want to follow me there, I kind of try to give some updates on running, medical school, and faith, and kind of how all three of them work together. And it's just kind of some of my thoughts in a little more than 280 characters.
Cool. And I'm on Instagram. I should have maybe checked my handle, but I think it's Hannah Smith, my maiden name, 424. And then I'm also on Facebook. And then definitely follow the Adams Sports Medicine and Physical Therapy page. We post a ton of good stuff, blog posts, some recent research, things like that. So definitely check that out on Facebook or Instagram, or I think we're on Twitter too. So let's move into a couple questions. Feel free to, I think you can type in on the Q&A option. So I will read this question. This person is more of a hiker and walker, but they want to do the cardio they get from running. Any tips on self-motivating myself to run every day? Thank you. And I would just maybe change this question a little bit to focus on the cross-country runner as well. Not only tips for running every day, but also self-motivating strategies when you are just feeling tired and maybe a little bit burnout, you know, if you're getting towards the end of the season, how do you stay motivated to get up every day?
I would say, well, for the cross country runner, we're on teams already, but if this individual who asked the question isn't on a team, any type of accountability partner is going to help motivate you. So just a friend, even that you could go with, or if not, someone who's expecting you to report back to them what you did that day. The accountability is really great for motivation. I think also amazing for motivation is having a plan. So whether you buy a plan, you download a free one off the internet, you hire a personal coach, someone like myself, you make up your own plan, you set some time aside and write down your own plan for the week. Having that plan is like so helpful when you're not motivated, because it's very difficult to make up your workout when you don't even feel like getting out the door. But if you have a plan, you wake up that day and you're like, I'm going to do it, right? The decision's already made because there's a plan. So that helps so much with motivation. And lastly, I would say for the, Hannah, you talked about the cross country runner who's feeling burnt out, just not into it anymore, tired. I would say, number one, let's go back through these things that Maureen mentioned. Like, are you eating enough? Are you sleeping enough? Or maybe you're overtrained. And if you are, then there's no need to be motivated to work harder. We need to be motivated to get some rest and get back to health, right? And if those things are there, then once again, accountability, understanding that you're never going to get anywhere without some discipline in life. And discipline is a lot more reliable than motivation. Motivation comes and goes, but we can rely on discipline, which is just doing it anyway.
Yeah, I think Nicole summed it up really well. Yeah, so I don't have anything to add.
I think having if you're not a cross country runner and maybe not on a team, having something to shoot for, having a goal. I know right now all the races are canceled, so it's a little bit hard, but doing a virtual race, or setting, hey, I want a 5K in my PR in 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and just having that on your calendar can really help you get up in the morning and work towards that goal. I don't think we've gotten any more questions, so I'm going to ask a question. Erin and Nicole, I see this pretty often in the clinic, where in terms of overtraining, when runners, it seems like they're always running too hard. Like a lot of times I'll say, make your hard days hard, make your easy days easy. What are your guys' thoughts on this? How easy are your easy days? Just speak to this a little bit.
So I actually learned a lot about this from Nicole. So we had the wonderful, as a college athlete, I was able to train with Nicole some days, and she brought so much wisdom, and also just training help, but so much wisdom. And she and my coach finally convinced me that I needed to take my easy days easy. And that was definitely a part of the equation as to why I was getting hurt. It wasn't the only thing. The underfueling was definitely playing a big role. But being able to run my easy days easy allowed me to take advantage of running the harder days hard. And also it made me kind of running easy days easy. It really makes you appreciate what each day has to offer, and it kind of prevents a little bit of that burnout. So I'm gonna let Nicole take it from here, but she's awesome at this. So.
Yeah, I would say very proud of you, Erin, for learning to run easier. This is a problem that, oh gosh, I think it's a problem that a lot of people struggle with. And I would say younger athletes can tend to get away with it because they're just young whippersnappers, okay? But you cannot get away with it forever. And truly, setting up good habits early on will serve you well later. If you actually run your easy days easy, like, you can bring so much more to workout days. And when you're crushing the workouts that you're meant to crush, it gives you great confidence, and you get fitter Okay, but you cannot do that if you're using up that energy on an easy day. So in sometimes it's almost like choosing to not do your best that day. Okay, you know you could go faster and you're choosing not to because you know that tomorrow you're going to go hard. Okay, and something that I think people will realize over time is once you kind of start in that direction, you're able to run harder in your workouts, and you actually then need to go slower on your recovery days. You find that like you can get more out of yourself and make yourself even more tired on the workout days, which then requires you to go slower on your recovery days. So it kind of feeds into itself. And I really challenge everyone I work with to kind of find their extremes. So if your easy day and your hard day are kind of like difference in pace of like, 5 seconds per mile, then like there's huge opportunity there to improve. Just go slower on your easy days, and once you do that, you will have an opportunity to see some bigger progress on workouts.
Awesome. And I want to ask one more question. What are some of the strategies that you guys have used to deal with the pressure to perform and run at a really high level? What are some of the strategies that you guys use to deal with this?
Okay, I'm very passionate about this topic. I will try not to speak too long, but I think one of the biggest things that I did was when I was feeling like extreme nerves and also just feeling like maybe a little inadequate on the start line. I always felt that people had a little bit more than I did, a little underprepared. I did start with the encouragement of my coach. I started working with a sports psychologist. And what I learned truly was it was more so a confidence issue in myself. So I think runners, we can tend to be very hard on ourselves. We are quick to see where we can improve, have a big long list of where we want to get better and what we're working on, and do not actually have like on the tip of our tongue everything that we're doing well right now and everything that we're succeeding at and doing great day in and day out. And I think that one of the things that really helped me with this pressure to perform is gaining an understanding, ability to see where I was great already. Building confidence helps take away some of that pressure because that sense of kind of inadequacy or lesser than, or like worried about what's going to happen, or oh my gosh, like worried about outcomes, goes away a little bit with confidence. Another great strategy I learned from my sports psychologist is just have a race plan. So when I was worried about what's going to happen, like my anxiety was, what if I don't meet my expectations? What if the outcome is less than I want? Feeling the pressure to get that outcome I want, worried that I'm not going to, I found it very helpful just to have a race plan. So instead of worrying about what the outcome was going to be, which I didn't know, I would just refocus my thoughts on what am I actually going to do in the race. And I'm really breaking it down. So what do I want to think about on the start line? One word in my mind on the start line, plan for the race. What am I going to think about through the first mile or first K or first half mile? Breaking it down into little chunks and having in my mind this roadmap of what I was going to do that I could actually choose to do in my control. And that kind of helped me feel less pressure and less uncertainty of what's going to happen. And I have to get what I want, just focus on what I'm going to do. That helped me quite a bit.
So obviously Nicole has great advice, and totally love what she had to say. One of my favorite things to say on the line when I'm really, really nervous is I don't say I'm really nervous. Anytime that thought enters my brain, I just stop it and I immediately change it to I'm excited. And as simple as that might sound, your brain's pretty easy to trick. And so I just changed that from I'm terrified to I'm excited, and your mood follows what you tell yourself. And so I get excited and I love to race because I I tell myself I'm excited for it.
One thing that really helped me in college swimming was my coach would always say, control the controllables. Control what you can control your preparation, your training, your attitude, your sleep, your fueling. Those are all things that you can control, but what you can't control is who's racing next to you, how fast they're going to go, the weather, anything like that. If it's out of your control, put it out of your head, because it's really just going to take energy away from your performance, and your ability to perform. So that really helped me, especially at those kind of high pressure meets, just, doing what I could do to prepare as much as I could, and then just kind of letting it go. All right. I think that was most of the questions. I got a little bit in the chat. And I think we actually answered most of them. If we didn't answer any of them, feel free to email me. My email is Hannah, HANNAH @adamsportsmedicine.com. And I will answer anything else that we didn't get to today. And we went a little over on time, but oh man, this was awesome. So I'm excited that we got all the panelists here. This was really cool to collaborate with you guys. So thanks for being here. Thanks all the participants out there for being here as well. I hope you guys got something out of it. I know I did, just collaborating with you guys. And so, just kind of the big takeaways. You guys are strong women, strong runners. And I don't want you to feel alone if you are struggling or going through something. Seek help. Ask, your parents, your coaches, me, anyone else that you can to get help, because I don't want you to struggle through this alone. And I want you really, guys, all to be healthy through and healthy and happy running, not only this season, but for the rest of your life. I think that's kind of a big takeaway here. So I hope you guys all have an awesome cross country season. I know it's kind of a weird year, but make the most of it and have some fun. And I hope I don't see you in the clinic, but if I do, we will work to get you healthy. All right, thanks guys.